URY.
Evening, everybody. 2 minutes past 7. It's a Thursday night and it's the Harry Whittaker Show on URY. Send me a message. Use the box at ury.org.uk. Or, alternatively, if you're on your mobile, 07851 101 313 is the text. Loads of stuff on the way tonight. We're going to be playing my favourite game. You know what it is. Am I Naked? We phone someone. They're either clothed or they're not. And we question them and try and work out which it is. That's coming out after 7:30. And loads of other stuff too. Music on the way from Carly Rae Jepsen, Bastille and Paul Simon in the next 10 minutes. But we're going to kick off the show with one of my favourites. It's the song of the summer so far. It's Shut Up and Dance, and it's from Walk the Moon on URY.
URY.
Hiya, my name's Harry Whittaker, and I'm a former station manager of URY. Now, you've just seen me doing an opening link to a show. It looks complicated, but don't worry. Once you actually know what you're doing, it's really, really easy. I'm here to teach you a little bit about the desk at URY. So, why don't we start with the very basics? These are the microphone faders. As you can see, mic 1 is the main presenter microphone. That's the one I'm talking into now. And then the colour of microphone fader corresponds to the colour of the pop shield or microphone cover on the other side of the desk, so you always know what you're doing. As a general rule, when you fade up a mic, you want it faded up the whole way. As you can hear, if I begin fading down the fader to the microphone, my voice is getting slowly quiet. And now you can hear me again. So make sure you have your microphones faded up the entire way. You want to be hitting between 5 and 6 on the level meter here. As you can see, if you see a little orange line, that's perfect. If you find you're not hitting between 5 and 6 and seeing the little orange line on the level meter, you can adjust the volume of your voice. We have this knob here. It's called a trim knob. As you can see, it's currently set at 0, which is where you'll want it at the start of your show. And if you find that you're not at the right level, then you can turn it to the right and you'll hear my voice will become louder. And you can also turn it to the left and you can hear the opposite happens. Most people, though, will be happy having it at 0. Above the trim knob, we have our EQ buttons, and this is where you can control both the bass and the treble of your voice. Below the trim knob, we have the pan knob, where you can control where your voice will be heard out of. For example, if I turn it to the left, then my voice is coming out of the left channel, and if I turn it to the right, then my voice is coming out of the right channel. Here at University Radio York, our playout system is called BAPS. That stands for Broadcast and Presenter Suite. You'll notice that we have 3 BAPS faders, BAPS 1, BAPS 2, and BAPS 3. And on the computer screen, each fader corresponds to a channel. If you want to play something out of that channel, all you have to do, fade up the fader, select what you want to play with the mouse, and press the on button. And as you can hear, Carly Rae Jepsen starts playing. If you want to stop something playing, simply fade it down. Now, it's important to remember that fading down Carly Rae Jepsen won't actually stop her playing. For example, if I were to fade it back up, we can still hear her. If we need to stop something playing, then we take control of the mouse and we press the stop button on the channel. The same goes for all BAPS channels. For example, if you want to play a jingle out of BAPS 3,
URY.
or if you want to play a bed, that's the music you might hear radio DJs talking over out of BAPS 2, just do this. And as you can see, the level of the fader corresponds to the level of the music played. If you do plan on using a bed, once again, that's the music that you might hear radio DJs talking over. You want to have the level on the channel between about 10 and 20. That just means your voice can be heard. You can probably hear if I speak like this, you're struggling to hear me, so it's much better to have the level quieter. Here we have our output buttons. You always want Studio 1 selected so you can hear what you're broadcasting. However, if for any reason you think there's a problem, for example that you fail to switch the studio from jukebox to live, you can always check your output. For example, you can see this one is labelled ury.org.uk. If I press this, I can now hear what's being broadcast on the website. Equally, if I press 1350 AM, I can hear what's broadcasting on our AM frequency. But once again, Studio 1 is the one you want selected. Below our output buttons, we've got 2 knobs. This one's called Monitor, and it controls the volume of the speakers in the studio. So, if for any reason you need to turn the speakers up or down, just give it a twist to the right for loud, and a twist to the left for quieter. Below that, the one labelled phones, that's the volume that the output of the studio will come through your headphones at. So if it's too quiet, then you can turn it up by turning it to the right, and if it's too loud, turn it to the left and turn it down. Okay, this is where things can seem a little complicated, but don't worry. We'll go through it really slowly, and if you don't get it, I don't know, just watch it again. So, you can see each of these channels has a button called QPFL at the top of it. Now, PFL stands for Prefade Listen. As you might have guessed, if something's playing out of a channel, for example, if we play Carly Rae Jepsen, and if for some reason we want to check Pompeii's Bastille on BAPS 2, we can do that very simply, without the audience at home hearing it. All we have to do is press QPFL on the channel that you don't want the audience to hear. And then you'll hear that coming through your headphones or the monitor. Meanwhile, the audience at home will only have heard Carly Rae Jepsen. If we go back to the monitor and phone knobs on the right-hand side of the desk, you'll see two buttons below them, both labelled Auto Cue/PFL. Now, if you want to hear your Prefade Listen coming out of the monitors, make sure that that is selected. And if you want to hear your Prefade Listen coming out of your headphones, make sure that is selected. Right then, let's move over to the left-hand side of the desk. As you can see, there are 7 channels on this side. The one furthest to the left is labelled phone. Now, you might very well have a guest on the phone or an interviewee that you want to put out during your show. Very simply, if you want to do this, all you need to do is plug your smartphone into this red cable, into the aux socket, and fade up the phone fader, as you might have guessed. Please do bear in mind, though, that when the phone fader is faded up, the listener at home will be able to hear everything that comes out of your phone. This channel here relates to Studio 2. That means if you fade that up, you can hear whatever's coming out of Studio 2. It's rare you'll need to use that, but it's there in case you do need it. Next, we have our jukebox fader. That's URY Sustainer service. It plays non-stop music. We've got news, which comes through every hour. Now, interestingly, you'll need to make sure you fade down the news channel once you finish playing, because as you've just heard, if you fail to do so, you will hear a beep, which I imagine we'll hear again in just a moment. There we are. Make sure you fade the news fader down. Over here we've got our decks. If you need training on those, just ask our head of music. Here we have our 2 aux channels. That means if you've got some pre-recorded content that you need to play out through your computer or your phone, simply plug it into an aux lead and fade up the appropriate fader. Also, you'll notice on these channels that there are buttons with labels on at the top. These are alternate inputs. If you push the button, you'll change the output of the channel to whatever the label says. For example, if I were to change the news channel to aux 4, by pressing that, if I then faded up the news channel, it would correspond to aux 4. If I did the same on jukebox, it would correspond to aux 3. Now, something important to remember about alternate inputs is if you want to change it at any time back to the original, then the channel must be faded down. For example, I can't turn off the alternate input whilst the fader is still up. If I need to change it back to news for whatever reason, I must fade it down before changing it back. A common complaint we have here at University Radio York is that sometimes presenters are unable to play things out of certain channels. Now, normally that'll be because the presenter has accidentally turned the channel off. As you can see, each channel has a light underneath it on the on button. As you can see, they're all currently red, which means the listener at home or you will not be able to hear anything coming out of the channel. If we fade up jukebox, for example, we can hear music coming out of there. And as you can see, when I fade it up, the light goes green. Now, if the light is off and we fade up jukebox, you'll be able to hear that nothing's coming out of the channel because the channel is itself switched off. So if for any reason you can't hear what you want to play out of the channel, make sure the channel is actually turned on. Like so. And there we have it. Hopefully it wasn't too complicated, but if it was, don't worry. Any problems, just email someone at the station. Addresses can be found at ury.org.uk, that's our website, or alternatively, just on the walls in the station itself. Any problems, report it to our engineering team. Don't go fiddling around with buttons yourself. All it remains for me to say is have a fantastic time on URY and very happy broadcasting. One take wonder, buddy.